My name is Nicola Kefalianos and I'm a Gen Z uni student wanting to get on the impossible filling property ladder, and this is my dad John. He's a mortgage broker and a property developer.
Hello, my name is John Keflianos, and in today's episode, Nicola, we're going to go through the process of negotiating with agents and try to teach you some tricks that you need to learn to make sure you achieve the result that you're looking to get when you're buying that first property.
Well, negotiating with an agent doesn't seem that hard. Isn't it just about getting the cheapest price?
That is the end game, trying to get the cheapest price. But at the same time, you don't want to miss out on a property because you're going in too cheap as well. So what I suggest is really understand the property, really understand the market, do your research in that area, look at, and the main thing is really understand what's sold in that area. So there's one.
So that's the first step?
That's the first step. So I'll really understand what has sold in that area, not just what's for sale, because what's the listed price is very different to what is the price that it's actually sold for.
So by researching the market, you mean going onto realestate.com?
Correct, yep. So there's realestate.com where you can go to and actually search by sold properties and look for similar properties to what you're looking for.
And would you set a time frame for that, like 12 in the last 12 months?
So the time period really depends on the market that we're in. So if it's a really hot market and things are selling and the market is moving, you probably want to look for the shortest time period possible. So even 3 to 6 months and see what's actually sold and settled in the last 3 to 6 months. If the market is slower and things haven't moved in the last 12 months, then expand your search the last 12 months as well. So it all depends on the market you're in, but ideally in the last 3 to 6 months, look at what has sold and compare properties. And I would also recommend driving the area too and actually drive past those houses that have sold and comparing them to that house that you are looking at. So that's probably something that I would recommend as well.
So how does knowing previously sold prices actually help?
It gives you confidence in what to pay for that property. So the key in negotiating with a real estate agent is having confidence. But first of all, it's having confidence of knowing what your limit is.
So having a budget?
So having a limit on your finances. So this is where you must have a pre-approval before you even start looking. So make sure you do have a pre-approval in place.
Can you just recap on a pre-approval?
So pre-approval is speaking to a finance broker, knowing what you're sitting with them, working out what you can borrow, understanding your borrowing capacity.
So having a pre-approved loan.
Pre-approved loan and a set purchase price. So that's and when you always get a pre-approval, try to get a pre-approval for the maximum amount that you're prepared to go to. So set your limit based on your pre-approval.
And that will form your budget for buying a house.
Well, that will form part of the process, but the budget, I think, is really determined by the house that you're buying.
Okay.
So really researching the property. For example, you might find the ideal house on a 400 square metre block. The budget for that will be different than it is for your ideal house on a 300 square metre block. So really understanding the market and what properties are selling for will sort of determine what your budget is on that individual property. That budget is very different to your limit. So really set your budget on the property you are looking at buying.
So what if the agent pressures me to go over the budget?
And that's their job. They will. They will be pushing you up as high as possible. So they'll use different
But then my
tricks.
job's to pay the least amount.
Well, your job is to really understand what you think that property is worth.
Okay.
So the real estate agent will be there trying to get you up on your price, trying to get you to the highest price possible because they're there working for the vendor. So they're there to try to get the best price possible. Your aim is to really understand the market and know what that property is worth and make sure you don't overpay. Setting your budget on that property. And again,
and that all stems back to the research process.
It comes back to the research. So really know the market, know what's sold in the area, drive the area and really understand it. So it's very easy. It's not easy, but with experience and with going through as many open inspections as possible and looking at sold properties, you'll get a bit of a gauge of what you think that property is worth. So you should be able to go into a property and say, well, that property is a $700,000 property. I wouldn't pay more than $700,000 for that. So that's what you would do, set your budget based on that property.
What if my offer's rejected though?
If your offer's rejected, you just need to make sure you've made your best offer possible on that property and you're happy to walk away if they reject your offer. So you need to know that that's your best offer possible. You might start off a bit low and they might come back to you and say, do you have anything more in your budget to be able to go a bit higher? And you might start off $20,000 or $30,000 lower than your budget and you might then go up to your limit on that property. So don't be scared to go back and say that, but that's with a higher price and say that's my final offer on that property. And then if you don't get it, then you just walk away. And that's where I think it's important to have a plan B. So don't just look at one property, go to a number of open inspections. Know there's always going to be more properties coming on the market as well. So if you miss out,
it's not the end of the world.
No. So always really set your budget on that property and be prepared to walk away if you have to. So in summary, really understand the market and
The
what's sold in that area. So understand what's sold, have at least 5 comparable properties that you can compare to.
Yeah.
Know your budget, so know what your budget is on the property that you are looking at buying. But also
So
know
have
your
different
limit.
budgets for each property that I look at. Variable.
You set your budget for that property that you're looking at. So every property will have a different. So you'll have your range that you are looking for, but set your budget on what you think that property is worth.
And the third step
And
was
the third step
having
is
plan B.
having a plan B. So knowing that you are looking at other properties, don't be scared to walk away from a deal.
And don't fixate on one property.
Correct. Yep. And there's always going to be more properties that come up.
So, for example, if I'm on the phone to a real estate agent wanting to buy my first house, what do I tell them and what don't I tell them?
Don't make them aware of any timeframes that you're working to. For example, you might be renting and need to be out of your rental property in 3 months' time. Don't make them aware of that because they'll use that against you, knowing that you have to find a property in a short time.
And then make
frame.
you pay a higher price.
Potentially, yes. So don't be careful of what you say there. Also, just don't sound too desperate about that property. So don't tell them that, oh, I'm in love with this property. I really want this property. I have to buy it no matter what. So don't sound too keen on it. It's probably the 2 main things. Another tip that you always have to remember with real estate agents is that you're always in control. They're trying to get something from you. So they're trying to make you buy a property, but you don't have to buy that property. So just remember you're always in control and always know that you can walk away if you don't want to play their game. So don't think that you have to buy that property. You're in control. So what have you learned now in this episode, Nicola, about negotiating with agents and trying to buy your first property?
So I've learned that I must conduct research before purchasing a property. So I need to scope out the market, scope out the area and make sure I know what other properties have sold for previously.
Yep.
I must have a clear budget for each property I look at. So not have a set in stone budget overall, but make sure my budget differs based on each property.
Yep.
And then have a plan B and don't be afraid to walk away from a property.
Very good. And what should you make sure the agent is aware of about yourself, Nicola?
That I have a pre-approval and I'm actually serious about buying a house.
Yep.
And make sure I don't tell the agent my time frame and demonstrate that I'm too keen for the property.
Yep. Perfect.
We hope that you feel more comfortable talking to a real estate agent now and you've gained some tips and tricks. See you next episode. Thank you.
Thank you.